My fiancée publicly humiliated me at her family dinner, so I walked away calmly, and what happened next left everyone speechless and ashamed. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and I thought I finally found someone I could fully trust. From the moment Lily walked into my life, everything felt easy in a way I hadn't felt with anyone else. I've always been the kind of guy who plans, who calculates, who worries about the future. And Lily somehow made it all feel effortless. I'd come home from long, exhausting days at work, emails piling up, deadlines looming, and just talking to her for an hour could make everything feel lighter. I was dependable, yes, but with her, I wanted to be more. I wanted to be everything she deserved. Lily was magnetic, the kind of person who could enter a room and immediately have everyone laughing or leaning in to listen. She had this bubbly energy that felt contagious, but underneath it, there was pride, a sharpness she didn't always hide. She cared about her family a lot, which was one of the things I admired most, but sometimes it felt like their opinions carried more weight than mine in her mind. I tried not to read too much into it, at least, not yet. We spent countless nights sitting on my couch scribbling in notebooks, dreaming aloud about our wedding, our future home, even our weekend trips. I could see her getting excited about color schemes, guest lists, and the little details, and I felt proud just watching her. "You always overthink things," she teased one night, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. I laughed it off, because, sure, I probably did. "And you always make it sound like it's a big deal," I shot back, grinning. That banter, the small teasing moments, felt like part of the rhythm we had. I trusted her completely. Loyalty, honesty, generosity, they felt mutual. I could see a life together, a partnership built on respect. And for the first time in years, I felt secure. But now, the engagement dinner at her parents' house was coming up, and my chest tightened just thinking about it. I wanted everything to be perfect. Her parents' approval, her smile, my calm composure, but deep down, a flicker of unease had started to creep in, subtle but persistent, like a shadow waiting to stretch across the room. And I had no idea just how wrong my assumptions were about trust. I found myself pacing my apartment more than I cared to admit. I ironed my shirt 3 times, rearranged the tie until it was just right, and even practiced small talk in the mirror like some nervous teenager. I wanted to impress her parents, not just as her fiancé, but as a man they could respect. I'd worked hard to build a stable life, but somehow, the thought of standing in their polished dining room made my stomach twist. Meanwhile, flitted around the kitchen, humming a song I didn't know, occasionally checking herself in the hallway mirror. "Don't be too stiff tomorrow," she teased, leaning against the counter with that playful grin of hers. "Relax a little, or they'll think you're boring." I smiled, trying to shake the tension, but her words lingered. Was she teasing? Or was it a subtle warning? My mind tried to dismiss it. I'd always admired her confidence. Surely it was just that we packed the small gift for her parents together, some wine and a beautifully wrapped box of chocolates. The ribbon was slightly crooked, and she caught it immediately. "You really care about presentation, don't you?" she said lightly, tapping the edge with a manicured finger. I laughed nervously. "I guess. I just don't want to mess anything up." She nodded, satisfied, and the air felt almost electric, the kind that hints at excitement, but also something. Unspoken, the apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and her perfume, the combination making me both comforted and anxious. Outside, the night was quiet, a soft breeze brushing against the windows. I could hear distant traffic, faint, muffled, like the world was waiting with me. "I just want tomorrow to be perfect," I admitted, lowering my voice. "You'll be fine," she said, brushing my hand with hers. "Just don't embarrass me." Her smile was sweet, but there was a sharpness underneath it that made me pause. My chest tightened again, that flicker of unease returning. I laughed awkwardly, brushing it off, but something in her tone nagged at me. The car ride to her parents' house the next day would be quiet, but the tension already hummed beneath the surface. I had no idea that the night ahead would shatter my sense of trust completely. We arrived at her parents' house just as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of orange and purple. The neighborhood smelled faintly of wet grass and barbecue smoke, suburban normalcy that felt oddly foreign to the nerves twisting in my stomach. Lily led the way confidently, her hand lightly brushing mine, her smile bright, but I couldn't shake the little pangs of doubt I'd felt the night before. Her parents opened the door. Warm smiles plastered across their faces. "Welcome. So glad you could make it," her mother said, pulling me inside. The foyer smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers, the kind of meticulous attention I immediately noticed. Her father shook my hand firmly, eyes sharp but polite. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, yet I felt the weight of their scrutiny pressing on me like invisible hands. Dinner began with polite small talk, the clinking of cutlery and soft hum of conversation filling the room. I tried to match their rhythm, sharing stories from work, asking about her mother's garden, commenting on the decor. Lily laughed easily at her father's jokes, but every so often, she'd shoot me a glance, half playful, half critical. "You really like to overanalyze things, don't you?" she whispered once, as the salad was passed. I laughed softly, brushing it off. "Just making conversation," I replied. But her smirk lingered in my mind, the teasing edge sharper than it had been at home. I noticed subtle things I hadn't before. The way her mother raised her eyebrows at certain answers. The slight smirk on her brother's face whenever Lily interrupted me mid-sentence. The conversation seemed harmless. But each tiny jab, each subtle correction from Lily, chipped at my confidence, honestly. "You'd be lost without me explaining stuff." She teased lightly to the table, and laughter rippled around us. My face flushed, and I forced a smile, heart hammering. Something in me tightened, a knot of confusion and embarrassment. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was overreacting. But deep down, I could feel it, the first real crack in the image of trust I had built with her. Something told me this dinner wasn't going to be just another night of polite family chatter. And then it happened. Right there, in the middle of the dining room, under the warm glow of the chandelier. Lily crossed a line I never imagined she would. I was trying to explain a work project, something I'd been proud of, something I thought might impress her parents, and she interrupted me mid-sentence with a laugh. "Wow, that sounds kind of amateur, don't you think?" she said, voice light but sharp, the kind of comment that lands like a punch. Her parents chuckled awkwardly, and I felt my face heat up instantly. My words stumbled in my throat. I tried to keep calm. "It's just a small project, nothing fancy," I murmured. But the laughter around the table made it impossible to feel composed. I could hear her mother whisper something to her father, her eyes flicking toward me like I'd just said something absurd. The soft clink of silverware hitting plates, the faint scent of roasted chicken, the ambient hum of polite chatteret, all became deafening in that moment. I could feel every eye on me, every subtle judgment slicing through my chest. I just don't know how you even manage all that work," Lily added, the teasing edge now unmistakably cruel. Her smile was sweet, but her words were like nails on a chalkboard. Public humiliation, dressed as casual banter, I sat frozen, trying to steady my racing heartbeat, my hands gripping the table under the linen napkin. Part of me wanted to yell, to defend myself, to demand she stop. But another part, the part that had been quietly observing, building strength, realized that any reaction she wanted was exactly what she would get. "Don't be ridiculous," I finally said quietly, but firmly, and let the silence stretch. Lily laughed again, this time sharper, louder, like she'd won. I could see it in her eyes, the power she felt in embarrassing me, and in that moment, something inside me shifted. I realized this dinner wasn't just awkward teasing, it was a display, a game I had been unwittingly cast into. My trust, my patience, and my composure were about to be tested in ways I hadn't anticipated. I stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the hardwood floor, and for a moment the room went quiet. The soft murmur of cutlery paused, Lily's laugh dying midair. Every eye turned toward me, and I could feel the weight of their judgment like a physical force pressing down. My chest was tight, my palms sweaty, but surprisingly, my mind was clear. I wasn't going to give her the reaction she wanted. Not tonight. "Excuse me," I said calmly, my voice steady, even though my insides were buzzing. I didn't look at Lily as I walked toward the door. She called my name, sharp and incredulous. "Where are you going?" But I kept moving, slow, deliberate, my heart hammering in rhythm with each step. The soft scent of roasted chicken and the lingering perfume of Lily hung in the air behind me. But I ignored it. Her father's eyes widened, a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "Ah, he's leaving," her mother whispered, turning to Lily for an explanation. Lily's cheeks flushed, her confident smile faltering for the first time. He's overreacting, she stammered, though her voice lacked conviction. Outside, the cool night air hit me like a wave. The faint scent of wet grass and distant traffic made my chest expand with the tiniest relief. I could hear Lily pacing behind the door, calling my name, her voice sharp and accusing, but I didn't turn. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. For once, I let myself walk away. My mind raced as I inhaled the crisp air, part panic, part empowerment. Every step away from that table felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I didn't realize I'd been surrendering. I thought about all the little teases, the casual dismissals, the subtle digs I'd laughed often for the first time. I saw them clearly, and then it hit Mitha. Silence inside that house. The tension thick enough to choke anyone wasn't just awkward. It was shame. They had all watched Lily humiliate me, expecting me to react, and instead, I chose calm. The thought sent a strange thrill through me. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same between us. I sat on the curb outside her parents' house, the night air brushing against my face, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My chest still ached, and every nerve in my body was buzzing from the adrenaline of walking away. I kept replaying Lily's words over and over in my head, the cruel laughter echoing louder than the soft hum of distant traffic. I wanted to feel anger, to yell, to storm back inside, but something deeper had shifted. I felt clarity. Then my phone buzzed. A message from one of our mutual friends lit up the screen. "Dude, you need to see this. Lily's been doing this to more than just you. She brags about making guys look stupid at family dinners. She calls it keeping them humble." I stared at it, my stomach twisting. I had always thought that teasing was harmless, maybe even cute. But reading those words, knowing this was part of a pattern, made my chest tighten in a different, sharper way. I called him immediately. "Wait, what do you mean?" I asked, voice low. "Bro, it's not just dinners. She posts it online sometimes, tells everyone she's dating naive guys who don't know their place. She's been manipulating you from the start." The words hit me like a punch. I felt like I'd been living in a perfectly framed photograph, only to realize the whole picture was a lie. The air smelled faintly of rain, wet asphalt, and lingering perfume mixing, and I shivered, my hands gripping my knees. I could hear footsteps behind me on the sidewalk and tensed, expecting her to appear, to justify, to accuse, but it was just a neighbor walking their dog. The normalcy outside felt alien. I thought about all the moments I had brushed off, the subtle jabs, the playful insults that had never felt playful, the little digs that now seemed deliberate. My trust had been weaponized, my loyalty twisted into public entertainment for her amusement. And that's when it hit Mitha engagement. The future I had imagined wasn't just crumbling. It was a lie built on her control, manipulation, and calculated humiliation. I didn't know what to do next, but I knew I couldn't go back not without reclaiming every ounce of my dignity for a stop the next morning. I reached out to my closest friends, needing someone to help me untangle the mess Lily had made. My phone felt heavier than usual in my hand, each buzz from incoming messages making my stomach tighten. I needed perspective, and I needed confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. "I can't believe she did that," said my friend Mark when I explained everything again, his voice filled with anger. "And laughing while you were humiliated. That's not teasing, it's cruel. Dude, you did the right thing walking out." Hearing it said aloud made something in me settle. For the first time since that dinner, I felt justified, not overreacting, not weak. I called my sister next, hoping to hear a reassuring voice. "She sounds toxic," she said firmly. "You don't deserve someone who treats you like that, especially in front of her parents. You need to protect yourself." The warmth of her words felt like a lifeline, and for a brief moment I let myself breathe. Still, I couldn't shake the images from the dinner, the laughter, the way Lily had smirked while everyone watched me shrink under her words. I remembered the way her father had raised an eyebrow. Her mother had glanced away, and even the faint amused smirk on her brother's face. Each detail, every micro-expression, was a reminder that this wasn't just about one moment. It was about a pattern of control and manipulation. The room smelled faintly of coffee and old books as I sat by the window, sunlight slanting across the hardwood floor. Outside, neighbors moved about their morning routines, oblivious to the storm of betrayal swirling inside me. I clenched my fists, my nails biting into my palms. the sting grounding me. I knew I had to confront Lily eventually, but first I needed to reclaim myself, to understand what I was walking away from and what I wasn't willing to walk back into. I couldn't let her spin this, not anymore. And yet, even with all the support, a small voice in my head whispered, "She won't let this go easily. She'll try something, and I have no idea what she's capable of." I finally agreed to meet Lily in a neutral cafe a few days later, my hands tightening around the coffee cup as I waited. The smell of roasted beans and the faint sweetness of pastries did little to calm my nerves. I had rehearsed what I would say 1,000 times, but my mind still raced with anger, hurt, and disbelief. I wanted to stay calm, but I also needed her to understand the gravity of what she had done. When she walked in, smiling that familiar, effortless smile, part of me wanted to look away, but I didn't. I stayed put, holding her gaze. "We need to talk," I said quietly, letting the weight of my voice settle between us. She slid into the seat across from me, tilting her head like she always did, playful and confident. "You really think this is necessary?" she asked, feigning innocence. Her perfume, light and floral, filled the space between us, and I had to shake off the urge to flinch. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "At the dinner, you humiliated me in front of your parents, and it wasn't an accident. You've done this before, and it's not just teasing, it's manipulation." Her eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of defensiveness. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, voice sharp but strained. I leaned forward, letting my words carry the calm I'd cultivated. "You called me naive, made jokes at my expense, and expected me to just sit there. I walked away because I refused to be a pawn in your game. Do you understand that?" There was silence for a moment. She opened her mouth, closed it, and finally muttered, "I didn't mean it like that," but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. For the first time, I saw her falter. Her confidence wavered, the mask slipping just enough for me to see the truth. She had relied on my loyalty to humiliate me, and now confronted, she had no shield. I sat back, letting the silence stretch, feeling a strange sense of empowerment. I wasn't yelling, I wasn't pleading. I was simply showing her that dignity couldn't be taken, and control couldn't be demanded. And yet, deep down, I knew this confrontation was only the beginning. She wouldn't go quietly. After that confrontation, I thought I'd feel lighter, vindicated, like I'd finally reclaimed control. But instead, I hit a low I hadn't anticipated. The next few days were a blur of sleepless nights, self-doubt, and replaying every detail of that humiliating dinner in my head. I kept asking myself if I had overreacted, if I had somehow misread her teasing as cruelty. I scrolled through our old messages, photos, and voice notes, each one suddenly tainted with the knowledge of her manipulation. Her jokes that used to make me laugh now felt sharp, each word a calculated cut. Even the memories of her smiles, her laughter, and the late-night talks that had once made me feel safe now twisted into reminders of betrayal. Calls and texts piling up, but I barely responded. "Hey man, you okay?" Mark asked during a call that I almost didn't pick up. I swallowed hard, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know. I feel like I was blind this whole time." He didn't interrupt. He let me speak, letting me unload the weight of humiliation, the sting of betrayal, and the confusion that clawed at me from inside. The apartment smelled faintly of stale coffee and damp laundry as I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window, a soft rhythm that somehow matched my heartbeat. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering, not from cold, but from the ache in my chest. The sinking realization that someone I trusted could weaponize that trust so cruelly. I replayed the dinner over and over, her smirk, her sharp comments, the laughter of her family, and felt a hollow pit of shame and regret in my stomach. It was like standing in a room full of people, yet utterly alone, powerless against the tide of their judgment. And in that darkness, I realized, if I wanted justice, if I wanted my dignity back, I couldn't just hope for it. I had to take it. I decided it was time to reclaim my story. I started quietly sharing what had happened with close friends and a few colleagues, people I trusted to understand without judgment. At first, it was nerve-wracking, the fear of gossip, of being seen as overreacting, gnawing at me. But each person's reaction shock, anger, validation, was like a bomb on the raw edges of my humiliation. She did what? In front of her parents, one friend exclaimed. I nodded, biting back the urge to tear up. Yeah, and it wasn't the first time. She's done this before. Publicly, privately. It's her pattern. Their gasps. The incredulity in their voices made me realize I wasn't imagining things. I hadn't been too sensitive. I hadn't misread playful teasing. I had been manipulated. As the news spread through our shared social circles, whispers began to reach Lily herself. I didn't engage directly. I let the truth speak for itself, and slowly, I watched her carefully curated image begin to crumble. Mutual friends confronted her gently, asking why she had humiliated me. Some were stunned. Others were quietly disappointed. I wasn't seeking revenge, wasn't about spectacle. I just wanted honesty, and the consequences naturally followed. Walking through the city streets that evening, the damp air carrying the faint scent of rain and exhaust, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. People I hadn't expected were reaching out, saying they respected how I handled myself, admiring that I walked away calmly instead of lashing out. For the first time since the dinner, I felt the balance tip back in my favor. Lily tried to contact me, messaging, calling, even sending a passive-aggressive post on social media. I ignored it. The silence was louder than any argument, more satisfying than any confrontation. And in that quiet, I realized something important. The power she thought she had over me never existed. I had been the one in control all along. I had simply chosen when, how, and where to exercise it. Days turned into weeks, and with each one, I felt the weight of humiliation lift a little more. I spent time with friends who reminded me of who I was before Lily's manipulation had cast shadows over my confidence. I started running again in the early mornings, the crisp air filling my lungs, the rhythmic pounding of my feet on the pavement, shaking off the tension I'd carried for far too long. I called my sister, and for the first time, in what felt like months, I laughed while telling her about the ordeal. I can't believe she tried to pull that on you, she said, shaking her head over the phone. But you handled it like a damn adult. Her words, warm and unwavering, felt like sunlight through clouds, cutting through the storm that had been swirling in my mind, even in quiet moments alone. I started noticing small changes in myself. I was no longer second-guessing every interaction, every word spoken. I could sit in a cafe without scanning the room for judgment, walk into meetings without that gnawing self-doubt, and most importantly, I no longer felt the urge to prove myself to someone who had never truly valued me. One evening, I walked past the neighborhood where Lily's parents lived. The faint scent of dinner cooking drifted through the air, mixed with the wet asphalt from a recent rain. I thought about that night, the public humiliation, the laughter, the cold stare of her family, and I felt nothing but calm. Nothing I had done or said could change the past, but I had changed, and that was enough. I realized the real victory wasn't in any social reckoning or in watching her embarrassment unfold. It was in reclaiming my peace, my self-respect, and my ability to trust myself again. I had walked away. Yes, but I had walked toward something far more valuable, my dignity. And as I watched the sun set, painting the streets gold, I knew this chapter was over. But my life, that was just beginning. Months passed, and life slowly settled into a rhythm I hadn't realized I'd missed. I started dedicating more time to myself, reading, traveling, reconnecting with friends who had stood by me. The city felt different now, brighter somehow, as if every street, every cafe, every familiar corner was a reminder that I had survived and grown stronger. I met a group of friends at a small rooftop bar, the air crisp, the scent of evening flowers mixing with the faint tang of city smoke. Laughter bounced off the walls, clinking glasses, and for the first time in a long while, I felt fully present. Someone nudged me, grinning. "You're glowing, man." What changed? I smiled, the warmth in my chest spreading outward. "I just stopped giving people power over my peace," I said quietly. They didn't need to ask more. They understood. Lily faded from my life entirely. Her attempts to reach out, to twist the story, even to manipulate mutual friends, were met with quiet dismissal. I never engaged. The whispers she left in her wake couldn't touch me anymore. I realized that the real triumph wasn't in proving her wrong, it was in living my life fully, freely, without fear or doubt. And in those moments of quiet reflection, I understood something important. Dignity can't be taken. Respect can't be demanded. Control can't be forced. They exist only when you claim them for yourself. And that power was mine all along. I smiled at the horizon as the city lights flickered on, the orange glow fading into deep navy. I had walked away from humiliation, betrayal, and manipulation in doing so. I had walked straight into empowerment, clarity, and peace. The chapter with Lily was closed, but my story, it was just beginning, and this time, I was the one writing it. For the first time in years, I felt truly unequivocally free.